Game one of round two is officially here, and for the Carolina Hurricanes, there is three keys to them winning this game against the Capitals. Why I think special teams will lead the way, why the Canes' depth will help them once again in this round, and if they stick to their system, they could be coming out with a W. That and much more on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about, Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers, also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a terrific Tuesday edition of the pod, as is officially game day for the Hurricanes in round two against the Washington Capitals. Going to be doing the big three keys of why I think the special teams will have to be big again for the Hurricanes, especially on the PK side of things, but also staying hot on the power play. Why I think their depth is more adapted to winning this game and potentially winning this series for them. And if they stick to their game and with the system that we know works fine for a full 60 minutes, the Hurricanes will come out on top in game one. Now, with all that being said, it's a very big game for the Carolina Hurricanes because I know it's only round two, it's only game one, but if you're looking at the Carolina Hurricanes and what they're having to get ready for. I mean, you're talking about, you're facing the Eastern Conference, number one guys in the Washington Capitals, and that they won their series in 5. You won your series in 5 against New Jersey. And now it's going to be looking, okay, what's the impact for the Carolina Hurricanes of what can they do to get themselves ready for this one? I think it's going to be very big. And the first one is definitely got to be the special teams. And we all know how good the Hurricane special teams was. I mean, you look at the regular season, and we all know that the Hurricanes, in terms of the penalty kill, were, number one in the entire NHL at 83.6. Their net PK was 87.7 because they had a lot of shorthanded markers. For the Washington Capitals, they did have the fifth best PK at 82%. Their net PK was at 85.4. On the flip side, if you look at the power play, wasn't really the greatest. I mean, the Washington Capitals were 14th at 23.5, with their net power play being 20.4 because they did get scored on shorthanded. For the Carolina Hurricanes, their power play was 18.7, which was 25th. Their net power play was 16.7 because, they also, like the Capitals, did get scored on. However, when it comes to the playoffs, how about for the fact that the Hurricanes have the fifth best power play in round one at a 31.6, with their net power play, being 31.6, so they never gave up a shorthanded goal. The Washington Capitals, on the other hand, 23.1%, which was 9th out of the 16 teams. Flip it over to the penalty kill side of things. Obviously, the Hurricanes were first at 100%. Only team to go perfect in the first round. And their net PK was 106.7. Big thanks to Jordan Martinook and his Game 2 shorthanded marker against the New Jersey Devils. Now, this is where it can be very big for the Hurricanes. The Washington Capitals were 13th out of 16 teams on the penalty kill. 66.7%, which was 13th. The only teams worse than them, Ottawa Senators at 64.7, the LA Kings at 61.5. Those two teams are eliminated, but the last place penalty kill unit is surprisingly the Edmonton Oilers at 60%, but because the LA Kings also gave them a lot of goals to the Edmonton Oilers power play, they were still able to move on. So for the Hurricanes, what really helped them in the first round against New Jersey was the fact that one of the main things was the question that we all know talked about it was, can it do well in the playoffs? Because you hear the regular season numbers, it struggled. First round, hey, you're fifth best. You're at over 31%. That's a big key. And the PK was number one in the regular season, and is right now number one in the playoffs. So if this continues on to a stretch of like, do I see them going 31% again? Who really knows? But if you look at the Capitals PK, which was 13th against the Montreal Canadiens, that should almost bode well for the Hurricanes that this is a big key for them, is that if their power play still remains high, like I think they scored 4 out of the 5 games, they scored power play goals, and they scored a special teams goal in all 5 games. But if the Hurricanes are able to just get, 3 or 4 power play goals in the series or even more, I think that's really going to set them up well, because the Capitals penalty kill really struggled against Montreal. And Montreal was an okay team, very top heavy, didn't really have a lot of depth on the Canadiens roster. Now the Capitals are going to be facing the Hurricanes, who have depth. I mean, you're talking about Jack Roslovic sitting for a couple games in the series. Mark Jankowski missing the first 3. Tyson Jost hasn't really filled in yet, but he's an extra. Riley Stillman's an extra. So like the Hurricanes have a lot of depth and a lot of strategy to go their way. I think that's what's benefiting them against the Capitals, where the Capitals just basically had to shut down a couple lines for the most part of Montreal. Now they got to deal with a Hurricanes team who's fully healthy and fully stacked with guys who can just go. They have all 4 lines. Frederick Anderson's back. Jesperi Kotkaniemi's back. No one's really out for the Hurricanes. And now they can play with strategy, and I think that's what's probably going to be tough on the Capitals, because if you struggle against a Montreal team that's so top heavy, but you look at Carolina and how their power play was, which was 31%, with a full roster with a bunch of extras on top that were all healthy, and now instead of having to worry about, okay, who can we dress because we're short on guys, now it's like, okay, who do we dress? We have too many guys. What strategy do you want to go with? So that's what I think the special teams is going to be big, because if they keep all that play of having the bumper in the right spot, have all the guys move around, not stay still, be able to keep the ozone possession going, move the puck around, be that very strong forechecking team, have some really good zone entries, set up the play, don't do too many passes. If they're able to get the passes off a lot quicker and get pucks on net, shoot for rebounds, or shooting in areas where, if Logan Thompson's a little weak in one area, or Charlie Lindgren, attack that area, keep the Capitals moving. If you keep them hemming in their zone for long periods of time, even if it's not the power play expires, but they've been in their zone for minute and a half, 2 minutes, they're going to tire out. You could attack that still, even if they get a guy coming out of the box. And for the penalty kill, what they really got to focus on is not letting Ovechkin do his thing in his office. If the Hurricanes, like they did against the New Jersey Devils, they had 15 penalties. They went 15 for 15. Of course, there was a couple 4-on-4s and stuff like that. But even then, even when they were down a guy in overtime, they still shut the door. So if the Hurricanes, once again, if they limit the Capitals on their power play, then the Hurricanes are fine, because the last thing you really want to do is play with fire. You don't want to give Ovechkin in that offense, 3, 4, 5 power play chances a game. If you limit it to 2 or less, there's a lot of these games where it was like maybe 3 at the most for the Hurricanes in terms of penalties. So if you keep it to around 2, 3 max, and you really make sure you have someone near that area where Ovechkin's at, I think you easily could stop that power play and really limit their chances. So if you stay out of the box and watch video, and if you're Tim Gleason, he's going to coach these guys well. But if they were able to get themselves going to where they know where to be at the right time, I think that's really going to help them out overall of getting ready to shut down Ovi, shut down that power play unit. So I think that's going to be a big key thing for the Hurricanes. So as long as their power play is still going, I'm not going to say if we get 31% again, that's great. But as long as you're scoring power play goals and doing what you need to do on the power play, getting, those opportunities to take advantage of that, that's going to help. And on the PK, if you're able to stick to your game, shut Ovi down, limit the Capitals on their power play chances, that will be a big way for the Hurricanes. And I think that's why, for me, this first game will be a tone setter for the special teams. If you can score on your power play and limit the Capitals, especially in their barn for game 1 and game 2, I think you're giving yourself a good opportunity to come back to Carolina, at least split, but if you at least take game one, you are in some good shape. Now, speaking of the Canes' depth, what does it mean for the Hurricanes? The fact that their depth, I think, is stronger than the Capitals. Well, stick around and we'll do that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
An award-winning mattress can change your life. I speak from experience. It happened to me. After years of uncomfortable sleeps, I recently switched to Bear Mattress, and the results were instant. Bear Mattress is designed with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. I used to deal with night sweats, but Bear's best-in-class cooling ensures optimal temperature regulation, which prevents overheating and helps me stay comfortable all night long. Bear offers a wide variety of mattresses, but to get the right one for you, take their sleep quiz that matches you to your perfect mattress based on body type and sleep preferences. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout to get 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com. Use my promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. It's like I had said in segment 1, special teams is going to be very big for the Hurricanes, especially with limiting their opportunities for the Capitals to go in their power play, and as long as their power play is running well. But I also said at the very end, why do I think the Canes' depth could be a lot better than the Washington Capitals? Well, let's start off with Washington. What are we looking at in terms of their lines and what the Hurricanes could be seeing in that first game, in D.C.? So the first line, you're looking at Ovechkin, Strome, and Beauvillier, McMichael, Dubois, Wilson, Mangiapane, Eller, Ryan Leonard, Duhaime, Dowd, and Protas. Now, Protas did have a good regular season for the Capitals. Hasn't really done much in the playoffs. He basically missed much of the first round. Outside of that, Mangiapane did okay. Duhaime's mainly known for more of the physicality. Ryan Leonard, just got signed out of college towards the end of his season. I think for me, you're looking at a very top 6 heavy Capitals team with Ovechkin, Strome, and Beauvillier, of course. Sometimes you might see Wilson on that top line, but with McMichael, Dubois, Wilson, that's a very hard-hitting second line who can score goals for the most part, more so with Tom Wilson because he can score, and PLD had an unreal season for the Capitals, surprisingly enough. So I think, Eller could make some noise as well in that third line, but it's just when you look at that, how's Protas going to be? How is Nick Dowd? How is the depth going to help the Capitals? That's going to be one of the questions. Can the Capitals' depth match what the Carolina Hurricanes have? Because if you look at the defense, you got Chickard and Carlson, Rasmus Sandin and Matt Roy. Then you're kind of like, how's that bottom pair going to be with Alexiev and Van Riemsdyk? Of course, we Hurricanes fans remember Trevor Van Riemsdyk when he's with the Hurricanes. But, how is Sandin going to do? How's Roy going to do? With Alexiev, that whole bottom 4, I would say maybe the last pair is kind of, what are you going to get out of the Capitals? You could say that second pair could be good for them or maybe halfway decent, with Matt Roy being an okay king coming over to Capitals, and of course Rasmus Sandin getting dealt from Toronto. How's that going to work out for them? So I would say that second D pair is kind of questionable. Like, what are you going to get? It could be good, it could be bad. That last pair, you're not really sure what you're going to get as the Capitals. So you're kind of looking at maybe 1.5 good defensive pairings for the Capitals. That's pretty much it. And a very top 6 heavy with maybe 1 or 2 guys out of their bottom 6 that could possibly do something. Well, if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, as we all know, that all but 3 guys on the Hurricanes got points in the first round. And, it's Jordan Stahl, William Carey, and Sean Walker. Well, Jordan Stahl was a -1. That was really about it. Then Carey was a +1 and Sean Walker was an even, but they all did their own thing off the score sheet, which is what really matters when you're, Rod Brind'Amour and the Hurricanes. But you look at the rest of those guys. You've got Aho with 8 points, Svech with 6, Jarvis with 5. Even if you got Jackson Blake with 4 points, Logan Stakeoven, Taylor Hall, Jordan Marnick, even Jacob Slavin had 3 points. Chatfield got a goal. Jankowski and Roslovic got points, and they played, Jankowski played 2. Roslovic played 3. So, I mean, you're still getting, you're getting scoring up and down this line. Of course, yeah, you got the couple, the 3 or 4 guys that are kind of farther ahead in terms of points, but there's still a lot of guys that are pretty darn close. I mean, your top 10 basically is, for the most part, 3 points or higher in terms of their points, and you got a bunch of guys who have multi-goals. Stankoven's got 2. Jarvis has 2. Andrei Svechnikov is tied for the playoffs with 5, and Sebastian Aho has 3. And then you look at the Hurricanes lines, and that's why I think that their lines are so much deeper than Washington's. And you're looking at Andrei Svechnikov, who got 5 goals in round 1, and that's included the Game 4 hat trick. Sebastian Aho with 8 points. Jackson Blake, who had a 17-goal, 34-point regular season, has 4 points in the first round. This is his first playoff, so he already has 4 points. That's very huge. Then you got Taylor Hall, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Logan Stankoven. Hall and Stankoven, multi-point games for those guys. Now it's back in Game 1. And even Hall scored in that Game 5 victory to help lead the way in the comeback. Stankoven got the assist on the goal. Then you have a third line of Jordan Martinook, who had 3 points. Jordan Stahl, who didn't get any points, but it's still Jordan Stahl. His job is to shut down the main guys in the other team, and he did that perfectly well against the Devils. And then you got Seth Jarvis, who had 5 points, and he had a power play goal on top of that too. And that's your third line, and that third line rolls for the Hurricanes with no issues. So you're already looking at a third line for the Hurricanes is already better than the Capitals' third line. Then you look at the fourth line, and you talk about, okay, how's Protas going to be? How's the rest of that fourth line going to look like? Well, you have William Carey, who's won a cup, been there and done that with Vegas. You got Mark Jankowski, who had a great few games with the Hurricanes after coming from the trade deadline. He got a point in the playoffs. He has been playing really well. He was a huge physical presence for the Hurricanes, especially in Games 4 and Game 5 after missing the first 3. He came in, is provided an extra body that you can use for the penalty kill, which leads back into part 1 of this whole episode. And the fact that you got Aho Jarvis, then you got Stahl Martinook, and then you have what? Jankowski, Stankoven, Jankowski, Hall, Jankowski, Robinson. There's a bunch of guys you can throw into that PK. So adding Jankowski gives you a third penalty kill group that you can throw out there if you need to. And if you need someone on the power play, that's what he's there for too. Like the head coach in Nashville said, Mark Jankowski is a guy you can just plug in 5-on-5, power play, penalty kill, put him anywhere. He will do the job that you ask for him. And that's a huge addition to that. And nothing against Roslovic, but even with how New Jersey is playing, and now you're looking at a Capitals team who's very hit-friendly, you're going to need a physical guy like Jankowski, a big body guy who's going to be there to box out in front of the net. That's the guy you need. But let's not forget, Eric Robinson's right there on that left wing. He did miss a couple days because he was due to being sick, but he's back healthy and ready to go. But he's been a huge contributor for the Hurricanes this season. No one saw him having a career year, but he came in, did the job. He played, well in the first round too, and that's another guy who's got sneaky good speed. Forechecks almost everyone to death. Isn't afraid to throw the body either. So you're already looking at the Hurricanes, and you're going like, where is the downgrade? Where is the downgrade on this team? There is no downgrade. There's no question marks of, okay, how's this guy going to do? How's this line going to stack up? I think if you look at the Capitals, they have 2 good lines, maybe a couple pieces here in their bottom 6, but with the Hurricanes, there is no blemish. There's no, where's the question mark? There is none. For this lineup in the forward core, you look at the defense, I said you have 1 good D pair with Carlson and Chikrin, and maybe a half of a second pair with Roy and Sandin. And that last pair, I don't know. How are you going to be with that? But you look at the Hurricanes, you're going to have, Slavin and Burns. You know how Jacob Slavin is. I mean, he got 3 points in the first round. He did well. Burns, did play. He was on the score sheet, but he wasn't. He played well. He played well for the most part. Then you look at, okay, here's Orlov and Sheffield. They've been great together all season. Even the last couple seasons have been great together. Then you have Gostisbehere and Sean Walker. That's a great third D pair to have. So that's your third D pair compared to a third D pair of Alexiev and Van Riemsdyk. If you ask anyone around the league, you would love to have Gostisbehere Walker as your third D pair. That's a D pair that's at least top 4 in all of their teams. And they could even say Orlov Chatfield could be a top D pair on some other, lower seeded team. So the Hurricanes top to bottom, where do you see a weakness that the Capitals might have an edge? It's, maybe top 6 is a little bit closer, but bottom 6, the Hurricanes have the advantage. Defensive pairs, top pair, okay, depending on what you're looking at. That D pair is so much deeper for the Canes than the Capitals. It's just the Capitals have guys, but I just don't think they have the firepower or the depth totality that the Hurricanes have. That, I think, is what's really going to help the Hurricanes, especially in game 1 when you're on the road. If they can use the depth to their advantage, I think that's going to be very big in game 1 and even for the whole series. Now, how can they make all this work? Well, it's sticking to their system and playing their game. And what I mean by that? Well, you stick around for segment 3. We'll talk about that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feeling fuller longer. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about special teams, why I think that's going to be very important for the Hurricanes. Also talking about why I think the Canes' depth is going to be the big component in game 1 against the Capitals. Now let's talk about sticking to their system and playing their game. And that's going to be very huge for the Hurricanes because you're looking at a Washington Capitals team who are not afraid to throw the body, not afraid to get into scrums, not afraid to push it to the edge and get under your skin. And I think for the Hurricanes, if they do not fall into the trap of what Montreal did in turning into a physical battle with the Capitals, I think the Hurricanes are going to be in a good spot. Because we all know the Hurricanes, we all know what happened in the last, the second to last matchup between these two teams. Got pretty physical, got pretty feisty. And it's one of those things where it's like, you want to stick up for yourself, which is good, but also you don't want to fall into that trap of the retaliatory stuff. Because we all know usually it's the second guy who gets caught that goes to the box. Or, one of your guys has to go to the box too. Now it's 4-on-4 instead of a power play. So if the Hurricanes, stay out of that, limit those, get-togethers with the Capitals, I think they're going to put themselves in a good spot to get more opportunities on their power play. So if they stick to their game, they should be relatively all good to go there. Which also means you stick to your system. You stick to what's worked best for you. Why you had 99 points in the regular season. Why you won in 5 games in round 1. Forecheck the other team to death. Keep the pressure consistently going. Hem them in their own zone. Because if you look at the offensive ice times for the Hurricanes, it was almost always doubled compared to the New Jersey Devils. They hemmed them in for so long because they forechecked them to oblivion. That's what the Hurricanes do. It's constant pressure from their defensive zone to the offensive zone. 200 feet of just straight up pressure, and that's what really works out for the Hurricanes because they will grind teams to death, and that's what's going to help them. If you get into a physical battle, then you're wearing yourself out. You're playing into their game, and you're playing into their tempo. You need to use the tempo to your advantage because the Capitals are a older team. Yes, they have some, guys who are a little bit younger, but you got Jarvis who's young, Blake, Kotkaniemi, Svechnikov, Stanko, Robinson's, not a younger guy, but he's, relatively young to some other guys as well. But if you put yourself into a good spot where you use your speed and your style to your advantage, you are looking so much better because you could really speed by these guys. Yeah, the Capitals might have some guys who might be fast too, but there's a lot of speed on the Hurricanes team. So they stick to their transitional game from the defensive side to the offensive side, and stick with that structured play, stick to that transition, get the ozone, use that speed to your advantage. That's what's really going to wear them down, because now you're using that transition game to go into your forechecking game, which hems them in their own zone and tires them out more, because you are grinding them with all four lines and sticking to that too. If you stick to your defensive side of the game where you pinch at the right time, make the plays at the right time, quick passes out of your zone, get those zone exits, that will set you up too, because you do not want to give the Capitals any extra opportunities if you play lackadaisical, ho-hum defense. No, you got to be on point at all times in your zone. Get the puck out, get the transition game going, because you want to stay structured. You want to stay in your area of what you do best with. And I think that's what's going to help you, because, your road record wasn't great in the regular season, but you did win game 4, so you split the road. Hey, you did that. You checked the box off. You won on the road. So if you stick to what worked for you in round 1, there is no reason why round 2 can't be the same way. Maybe the series will go longer, because, like I said, even though the Capitals' depth isn't as big as the Hurricanes, that's still a team who can score goals. They still have goalies who can stop pucks. So this could be a very long series, but if the Hurricanes are able to steal a game or two in Washington, that really is going to set yourself up for a shorter series then, because if you're able to do that and play your game on the road as you do so well at home, like I said, limit the stuff on the power play and don't go in the box very much. Use your depth to your advantage. Use your system to your advantage. That you went 2-1-1 against the Capitals in the regular season. You outshot them 14-10. Of course, as I said before, regular season stats in the playoffs, chuck them out the window, throw them away. It doesn't matter, but you still know what worked for you. It's going to be a little bit tighter, but you're still able to do that. So I think if you're the Hurricanes, if you stick to the system that works, you stick to your game of not falling into their trap, falling into their tempo, and play your style, you should be setting yourself really well and not have a game 5 start where you're down 3-0 in the first period. If you're able to do like you did in game 1, game 4, a little bit in, game 3 as well, a little bit, I think you're going to set yourself up to be in a good spot, because if you play 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey right from the rip, you are going to put yourself in such a better position if you're the Hurricanes. Like I said, stick to the system that works. Stick to your game. Use the forecheck, back check really well, transition, use your speed to your advantage. You are a younger team compared to the Capitals. Use all those components to your advantage, because then they're drawing penalties. They're trying to stop you. So now you go on the power play, and your power play and special teams is going to be on fire, because now you are on the advantage more often than the Capitals, because you're making them make mistakes. Make them make mistakes. Give you the opportunity to go out there and put more pucks on net and score more goals. I think all 3 of these could link up perfectly well with each other, because of the system will lead to special teams, which will then have all those guys you have in your depth work to your advantage, because you are a team that's deeper than the Capitals. Use all of this to make game 1 the tone setter for the series. Because if you can take game 1, or at least game 2, if you at least split out of Washington, you're setting yourself up really good. But if you take game 1, you're putting the pressure early on the Capitals, because the last thing they want to do is leave Washington down 2-0 coming to Lenovo Center on Saturday. That will put them in dire straits. And you know what? That is a great way to put them in that position early. Limit your penalties. Be effective on your power play. Use your depth to your advantage. And if you stick to your system for 60 minutes of hockey with that system and your game of just forechecking, back-checking, transitional play, don't fall into their trap, you are looking golden for game 1 if you're the Carolina Hurricanes. Should be interesting. Should be fun. And I'm so glad that round 2 is officially here. And it's going to be so much fun watching playoff hockey once again for your Carolina Hurricanes. That being said, that will be a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. For your second listen, why don't you go check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. The podcast is at LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where I have link trees in my bios. where you can check out all my Carolina Hurricanes articles at thehockeywriters.com. If you want to check out my other podcasts, well, it's the Surgecast and all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, well, go listen to it on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, well, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up to let me know if you like the show as well. Share with all their Canucks to become everydayers just like you. But I hope everyone enjoyed the Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Tuesday and have fun watching your Canes take on the Capitals in Game 1 of Round 2. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.